What's up, Call of Duty fans? Al and I hold shift down a Frio here with you. CWL recap. We're going to be going over, of course, day 4, Thursday, from week number 4, the final week of Division B and final day of Division B before we get to Fort Worth. And, of course, all the roster mania over the next 2 weeks. We also got a look at what the pools will look like. I'll have that reveal at the very end of the video with a small little breakdown on what I think looks good, bad, or ugly, or somewhere in between all 3 of those things. If you're new to this channel, you just happen to find one of the better, and I would say, personally, the best competitive recap station when it comes to the CWL. So if you're looking for analysis, recaps, predictions, things of that sort, power rankings, I do those throughout every single week and have recaps for every single day that event happens. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, welcome to the channel. It's good to have you. Let's dig into what happened today, though, because we got a lot of things to talk about. Let's start off with where the day started off. Again, after Wednesday, there was a lot of shakeups, with Splice having lost to Denial, Heretics having lost to 100 Thieves, and United also having lost to Team Envy. So there's a lot of mix-up potential in the top side. Well, actually, throughout the entirety of the divisional standings. We'll all be reliant on what happens today. We'll start things off with Denial and Accelerate. Again, Denial coming off of that win versus Splice at a 3-2 fashion. Reverse sweep, mind you. They would be going up against the worst team in Hardpoint in the CWL. They, before this game, averaged a negative 80-point differential in each of their hardpoints. That's insane. Things would not go so well either here for them, as they would start off losing 250 to 213, but it was a pretty close game, and Accelerate looked like they came to play. That would be immediately countered by what has been their stapled game mode, the Search and Destroy, would be pretty much handled nicely from Denial. They looked good on it. It was a 6-3, and Accelerate, who was a top 2 team as far as the Search and Destroy averages go, at least in Division B, they would not look so great against the Denial team that's coming off of that hot win again versus Splice, where they had won on payload 6-3. So then you go to the Control. This is a mode that Denial's been okay at. Accelerate has also been okay at. But Accelerate looked a lot more polished here today, as they finished off with a 3-0 there before suffering a very lopsided defeat on the second hardpoint, 250 to 53. One of the worst losses in hardpoints that we've seen so far this regular season. So Denial, they'll improve to 2 wins and 5 losses, while Accelerate will be left staggering at the bottom of Division B. We'll skip ahead. Heretics and Envy, and if you watched my video from yesterday and we broke these two down, I actually had this being a very, very close set, even though if you just looked at the win-loss ratios and map differentials, you would say, well, Heretics wins this one. But you take a look at where they're the strongest and what their individual modes have looked like. This was a very 50-50 matchup, and it would be a very good one. At least it would end up that way in the second hardpoint. It would start off with Heretics coming out hot on what I believe is Envy's map pick. This is a hard point that Envy had looked good on throughout the entirety of their CWL so far. Very well rehearsed on it. Heretics would dominate 250 to 143, but then Envy would smack right back on the Search and Destroy on Hacienda, where they would take a 6-1 win against a team that has been good. I won't say incredible, I won't say perfect or even all that great, but they've looked good on Hacienda Search. Their averages are a little bit more even than I think the casting team was kind of panning out, but this is a team that has done better on Hacienda than they have done worse. Today was one of their worst days, 6-1, as Envy smacked right on back with a little bit of domination in their own right. And then the Control was actually really good control that was really just honestly clutched out by Team Envy. They would win that one 3-1, and then as you see at the last hard point, what a close and insane game that was. 250 to 236. Definitely, if you're going to go back and watch at least one map from that set, watch that last hard point. It was a treat to watch. Probably one of my candidates for my Eyes On analysis series. We'll take a look to see how we do that as we move forward. And then Enigma 6 and 100 Thieves. And again, Enigma 6 has been a very... well, they haven't been good in Search and Destroy, but they've really kind of started to gain a little bit of favor in their respawn game. But the problem is they're going up against 100 Thieves, who has been on fire all week. And that fire would continue again today at the tune of a 3-0 score. 100 Thieves comes out with a 250 to 174. It was close at times, but then 100 Thieves just stepped up. And the Search and Destroy, a 6-3. I believe that was on Hacienda as well. And then a very clean 3-0. And here's my thing about 100 Thieves, all right? I'll just leave you with this little tidbit on it and why this team is for real all of a sudden. And for those of you that have been following my channel for a while, you know that I was very down on this 100 Thieves team at the beginning of the CWL. And even if you were to look at them from last week, They were not convincing at all. This week, though, they go 4-0. They finish off the week at a 12-2 map count, with only losing maps to Envy and Accelerate. Both of those, well, that's insane. The fact that they were able to 3-0 teams like Heretics and 3-0 Enigma 6 after a rough week versus E United and Splice. This is the bounce back that this team absolutely needed, and they're looking great. Kenny is playing so well. I made a tweet earlier today that was talking about how the fact that Priesta is able to just get so aggressive and find success has allowed Enable to essentially maneuver around the map more freely, which is allowing Kenny to play trades as he sees fits and play a little bit more of a passive angle responsibly with the Maddox, or he can get aggressive if he does decide he wants to double challenge or try to play a little bait and switch game. But with all that action happening up front, it's allowed Slasher and Octane to play as a tandem duo in the backline, playing long lines of sight, and nothing has been able to touch it all week long. There have been a couple of moments where Kenny has challenged as if he still had a SOG in hand. There was one instance today in Hacienda where he slid on forward looking for a challenge, and he had a Maddox, and he slid forward around a corner into 3 players. That's typically what you would see a SOG player trying to do. There was no one even around him. He was trying to play for a heroic play, and it just didn't go off. He needs to clean that up. But beyond that, this 100 Thieves team is having a hard time finding something that's wrong with them as far as their setups go, their executions, their baits and switches. And it all comes on the back end of Priesta opening up so much opportunity. You got to give shout outs to Crowder for helping this team do proper vetoes. They kept Enigma 6 off of comfortable ground throughout the entirety of the day, and even throughout the week. They even got Heretics on some uncomfortable ground yesterday as well on their map picks. So the veto process and picking process has been looking very good for 100 Thieves. This team is very scary. Not doubt this squad. I am saying that mostly for myself than anybody else. I was a guy that was absolutely doubting this team as even a couple of days ago. No longer is that the case. They look incredibly improved. You finish off the day with the banger, Splice E United. A little bit of a comeback surge for both of these teams as Splice has now lost 2 straight. E United coming off of the loss from Team Envy, which even Clayster had mentioned that it was bound to happen with Envy. They have not been this bad in scrims. They would pop back off, and they did against E United the day before. But today, it would be the tale between E United and Splice. What would happen here? It would start off with a pretty convincing start for E United, 250 to 141, even a 6-5 in the search, but that round 11 really should never have happened. It was on Looney to make a 1v4 clutch up situation on the search to even bring things back. It was a 4-1, I think, at one point, or a 5-1 at one point, and it went to round 11, and E United would eventually clutch things out. And then the control was actually E United up early. I believe they were up either 2-1 or 2-0. I can't remember exactly, but they had the opportunity to close things off on the frequency that they were playing on control. There was a last 2v2 that just narrowly went the way of Splice. There was an opportunity potentially for a grab slam to close things out. It would have made this a 3-0, but we would see a final hard point, a second hard point, and that would go to Seaside. And if you're at all familiar with E United and Seaside, you know you're in for an incredible game. All of their games on Seaside have been incredibly close. This one would be no exception, as E United would pull out a little bit of a comeback as they were down in the last stages of the game, but it would be Splice not quite able to finish things off. A 250 to 248 scoreline does not get much closer than that. E United win the day 3-1. I win the day with 4 good predictions. It makes me feel good that all the stuff that we've been doing, all the stats and numbers we've been pulling in and looking at the potential vetoes and all that is starting to finally pay off. You gotta love to see it. Not as dumb as you guys all once thought. No, I'm still just as dumb. Don't get me wrong. It was just a little bit of stroke of luck. But that's how things would finish off as far as the final week of the CWL. Before we get into, of course, what everyone is waiting for, which is naturally CWL Fort Worth. Let's take a look at the standings before we go too far, because these do matter as far as who gets placed where in the pools. And how about this? The 1-2 100 Thieves after week 1, sitting near the bottom of the division, will eventually find themselves 5-2, 17-8 in maps. No words. That's the reaction that you get. It's insane to see the progress, especially after Heretics was at 4-0, Splice was at 3-0, United was at 3-1. You had no idea that 100 Thieves would be at the top of the division, but the way the tiebreaker works and the three-way tiebreaker, as you see it pop up, 100 Thieves would be on top, just above E United, who was just above Team Heretics. I believe that came down to head-to-heads. At least it does in some instance. Not 100% sure how all of that divisional standing works, because 100 Thieves, yes, they beat Heretics, but they lost to E United, so I'm not 100% sure how all that works as far as why it says head-to-head tiebreaker when that's not necessarily the case. But regardless, that's the way it got put out. The bottom of the division, you can start to see the 3 and 4 tie between Enigma 6 and Team Envy, and then you've got Denial just narrowly above Accelerate, which will take those divisional standings, we'll mix them with Division A, and we'll get the CWL Fort Worth pools. And I'm just going to go with initial reactions as these start to pop up. You take a look at Pool A first. Gen G, Team Heretics, UYU, and Denial. In Pool B, you've got 100 Thieves, Red Reserve, Enigma 6, and Evil Geniuses. In Pool C, Midnight Esports, Splice, Luminosity, and Accelerate. And then you've got the final, Pool D. E United, Optic, Team Envy, and Team Reciprocity. Let's start at the back with Pool D, because if you don't think that this is the pool of death, I don't know what you're on. Because E United, Optic, and Envy, those three are probably pretty even with one another. They're definitely the highest of competition when you look across the pools. Reciprocity's got to feel pretty bad about getting this pool draw. This is for Reciprocity, you take a look at this pool draw and you say, all right, time to put up or shut up, because they did not look good in the last weeks of their Divisional A play, but now they've got to go up against 3 behemoth of teams, at least as we saw Team Envy finish things off. Of course, they didn't start so well, but their closing was great. Optic, of course, having played with a sub throughout their 2 weeks of Division A, will now get Dashy back for Fort Worth and be probably the best team in the game. And E United are looking incredible as well after that performance versus Splice. And even the game versus Envy was close. So this is 100% the pool of death. Good luck guessing this pool. I'm not going to try. The only thing I see is maybe Reciprocity walking away with 1 game. That's maybe it. And that's just being generous, because I honestly don't see them winning a game at all. Pool C. Midnight Esports, Splice, Luminosity, and Accelerate. I'm actually really excited about this pool for a couple of reasons. Midnight Esports, we saw them, of course, in Pool A do some wonderful work, as they had obviously started off very strong, had a couple of hiccups versus LG and Reciprocity, but would reprieve their second week by defeating Gen G. They'll get to go against a solid yet staggering Splice team. Luminosity is going to have some time to work out the kinks and potentially make some changes. And then Accelerate Gaming, who knows what this roster is going to look like when it comes to Fort Worth. If it were me, you keep Profizi, you keep BZ, and you consider keeping Robbie B, but Emma Ruiz and Believe, I think, need to go. Even Robbie B doesn't really have a good claim to stay in the league at the moment. I don't think he's at the same level, but he hasn't shown terrible numbers or terrible performances. It just kind of comes down to if they find someone better that they can afford to bring into the mix. So this one, it's going to be kind of the battle between Midnight and Splice, obviously, but you talk about Luminosity, whatever changes they make, they can 100% do some work against a very vulnerable Splice team that we just saw, and Midnight Esports, who've shown some weaknesses in the past. We'll go to Pool B. This is by far, I think, the easiest pool. If 100 Thieves play like they did this week in this pool, they don't lose a game. I don't even know if they lose a map. Honestly, maybe 2 maps in this entirety of it. Evil Geniuses is not looking good whatsoever. Enigma 6 is a solid team, mind you. They've got some things to work out, and I expected them to come back into Fort Worth pools looking better than they did in the first 2 weeks of CWL, and they've got games that they can win here. Obviously, they should be able to beat a team like Evil Geniuses in their current form, and even Red Reserve is so inconsistent that it's very possible and plausible that Enigma 6 could beat Red Reserve. You take a look, though, at what's going on at the very tippy top when you take a look at with 100 Thieves. Obviously, their E6 game that we just previously saw. This is a team that you would think would win this division if they keep playing at the level that they had been throughout week 2. The big question mark for me comes down to, do they need a week of warm-up before they start to get into how they really play, or can they sustain what they just showed off into what will need to be happening at the Fort Worth pools? Question marks all over the place as far as if that will happen. I guess you can kind of read that as I'm not fully convinced on this team 100% yet. We're getting there, but not 100% there. For then Pool A, Gen G, Heretics, UYU, and Denial. And I'm actually very excited to see how this one goes because Gen G, of course, is that search and destroy behemoth. But you take a look at Heretics, a team that's also good in that department, and UYU, who's got some work to do in search, but are not exactly the worst by any stretch. I'm excited mostly to see Team Denial play up against a team like UYU and Gen G to see what they're able to bring. Obviously, we saw how they played up against Heretics the first time around. This is a Denial team that apparently will be staying in the States for a little bit of boot camping and scrimming, so hopefully they get some good work in. They're also bringing in a coach, so Denial could very well be doing the legwork and the research and the VOD reviewing and getting enough improvement to where they could actually be a contender in this pool. I said it. They could be a contender in this pool. Gen G has only been surviving on the laurels of their search and destroy. They have a lot of work to do when it comes to control and hardpoint if they want to keep up with the full fuel that Team Heretics especially has shown. So that's kind of my general reactions on the Fort Worth pools, but I want to know yours. Who do you have in each of your pools walking away on top? And who do you have potentially going home not looking so strong after the pools? And where do you think your pool of death is? If you don't think it's in Pool D, got issues, friend. But that's gonna do it for this one. Throughout this weekend, I will be doing a couple different videos. I will be doing an Eyes On series. It will be on one map. I officially decided I'll be picking one map from a set and doing full analysis of the entire map. It won't be in one strong sitting. It'll probably be mostly in clips of about 1.5 minutes each, skipping through some of the inconsequential moments that are happening. Although I know the arguments are probably there that some moments are not inconsequential, but it's mostly going to be based off of controls as well as hard points. I don't know if we'll be doing much as far as the search and destroy department because that could be a lot of rounds and it could take up a lot of time. It just depends. We'll see if there are games worth going back and watching. Maybe we'll find a couple of rounds from each of those. But beyond that, we'll also be doing, like I mentioned, power rankings as we culminate all of the regular season play for the first iteration. And then we'll be doing roster mania videos throughout all of the announcements that we hear for roster swaps. And then we'll do another power rankings leading into CWL Fort Worth as far as how all the roster moves have gone and if that shakes things up. And that'll also serve as our prediction video as far as our head-to-head matchups going into the first couple of days. Look, it's a lot to talk about. I hope you guys enjoyed the video content. Again, if you enjoyed the channel, make sure you hit that subscription button to get notifications when my videos do pop up. A pleasure having you guys back. Thank you so much for the support and all of the love as usual. I've been Shift, you've been you. That's been the recap. Until next time, keep holding it down. Later, bye-bye.